What's up? We're back. Today we're going to try and figure out how to help Jake move right in a new business venture. He's scrambling to get ready to move from Montana to Florida, join us, and he's working on a little business that he's got brewing, that he's had brewing, and he's running into some obstacles. And so today we're going to try and address what he's running into, see if we can help him out, help him figure out how to move in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Zach. This is not my first time actually trying to start this venture. I tried a year ago now, and it's a pressure washing business, is what it is. And I tried a year ago, and I kind of fell off of it because of reasons that I made up in my own head. And that's basically the obstacle that I'm running into now is really what I'm running into. As I spent the past 2 days, it was a good prospecting past 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday. And after doing research on door to door sales, those are the best times to go door to door, right? So that's what I've basically been doing, and been having a really really hard time like generating income from it, right? Like I have the ability, I have the skill, I have the knowledge. But at the end of the day, like after these 2 days, I'm feeling like I'm selling something cheap to somebody who's trying to pinch pennies, right? And not to say that that's not okay, because I know there's a lot of people that maybe do really well for themselves doing that, but it causes me to create this internal friction in my mind where the next step that I almost want to take is like, okay, there's another avenue, is going to these residential houses and offering somebody the service here. Or the other option is to spend a little bit other time, and this is kind of what I'm curious about, is go more towards the commercial basis of reaching out to property managers and HOAs and businesses who are like, okay, they are constantly taking in vendors. Um, it may take a little bit more infrastructure, but part of me is like, I don't know if that's me bailing out and running with my tail tucked because I didn't succeed in the residential space, or if it's more, you know, actually leaning into something that has higher upside. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Cool. So tell us what you've done and what the results have been.
Yeah, I mean, so basically right now, my first iteration, I did all the infrastructure a year ago. I spent all the time making the website and printing the flyers and doing the research, and I didn't pressure wash a single house. And really what that came down, it taught me a valuable lesson about what really matters and what to start. So that's what I did differently this time. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to go out and see if I can sell a service to somebody. So I basically have been going, I've tried 3 different neighborhoods, probably 200 houses, and I've gotten 20 responses and actively answering the door and having conversations with people, all negative. I actually got basically blacklisted from one of the neighborhoods because I was driving around. He recognized my truck from the day before. He said, "You can't be driving around doing that," even though there wasn't any soliciting signs, but whatever. Besides the fact is, yeah. So probably that's about the numbers right now.
So basically, you're going neighborhood to neighborhood, knocking on doors. Most people aren't answering. The ones that do, basically nobody's been that positive, and you haven't sold any jobs.
Yeah.
And so then you're thinking, all right, should I just stop focusing on residential and should I pivot to more of a commercial?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is where I think so much of this depends on people's personality, right? Like there's so many sales trainers out there who are like, hey, you got to cold call, pound the phones, constantly prospect by pounding the phones or pounding on the doors. And listen, like that works. I mean, the guys that we hired to do our pest control is because like 4 times the kid came over and knocked on the door. And the first 2 times he talked to my wife and I wasn't home and she gave him my email. And it's just like I was busy, right? It wasn't that he was annoying me. Um, it's just I didn't have time, and so it took like the fourth time, and finally I'm just going, yeah, all right, you can do it. So I'm not here to say that that doesn't work. It most certainly does. There's strategies and tactics that can help in that way. There's ways you can do it that aren't annoying, but the reality is, in my business career, I always knew that I didn't have any interest in doing that, and I think. The reason I started out with it depends on your personality is because if you really think about it, by nature, you're an engineer, right? Your mind
Mhm.
is it thinks in an engineering way. And so that's very different than somebody who's like a shotgun mind. Somebody who's just like, I'm going to pull the trigger and shoot these little shells everywhere I can, and something's bound to hit something, right? That's like more of a, I'm going to pound the pavement, I'm going to knock on every single door. That's not your personality, not my personality. I was fortunate very early on in my working career to be exposed to what they call direct response marketing, right? And essentially, direct response marketing is we send out a message and we send it to our primary target market, and we send it in a way that we believe will elicit a response from the people who may be interested in the thing that we have to offer. And we do it at scale, and I don't have to like pound on any doors. I don't have to piss anybody off. I don't have to be annoying to anybody, because I'm just like, for us, we're going to do it through direct mail. Some people will do it through Facebook ads, right? My point is I always looked at it and I said, what's the most efficient way to get to know? And this is very different. Like, a lot of people, they're pounding on the doors to try and get to yeses. For us, for me, when I prospect, when I do sales, my goal is to get to know as fast as I possibly can. Because if I don't get to know, it means it's a yes, right? And so if we
Mhm.
apply this whole idea to the idea of knocking on doors, do you do it commercially? Do you do it residentially? I actually don't think it really matters that much if you do it commercial versus residential at this point, because you're moving in a few months. So right
Right.
now, you're not trying to build a pressure washing business that you're going to scale in Montana for the next 10 years. What you're trying
Right.
to do is try and make a few extra bucks, help some people along the way, maybe develop a methodology that if you decide to continue to do something like that in Florida, you can. So with that being said, the way I look at it is like, I would start thinking more along the lines of, if you don't like pounding on doors, which I personally wouldn't, what are other ways that you can get? Because here's the deal, like, when I send direct mail, if I get, let's say, a 2% response rate, that's the same response rate, basically, a positive response rate, I should say, as I would have gotten pounding on every single one of those doors, or
Right.
phoning that many people. Like, if I called 1,000 people, maybe, let's say, 10% of them or 20% of them are going to answer their phones, and maybe 10% of them are going to say yes, right? It's really
Mm.
not, the math's not that much different when I actually send a direct mail campaign. So for you, direct mail may be too expensive, right? You might be at a place where you're going, Zach, I'm not going to spend $1,000 to send
Mm.
1,000 pieces of mail or whatever, to get a $500 pressure washing job. So it doesn't have to be direct mail. You could just print out doorknob flyers, right?
Right.
You could print out a doorknob flyer, and so here's the other idea. So that's one thing, is like, how can you effectively reach the same amount of people for a minimum cost? That's the first part. The second part is, what do you put on the door flyer that would actually get somebody to call you? Okay. Because I own a property management business, I can tell you most property management companies, especially if you're going after apartments or retail shopping centers or whatever, they're going to want to know, like, does this guy have a real business? Like,
Mm.
does this guy know what he's doing? And so I think anytime you're new in business, that's your biggest, um, that's usually your biggest hurdle, is,
Mm.
what's my body of work? And so when your biggest hurdle is what's my body of work, one of the first thing I tell people all the time is, like, Frank Kern, he's a great direct response marketer, and he always says, show people you can help them by actually helping them. So I'm a huge fan of, and I know this would work. I know somebody actually who I'm close with, who in college, this was how he started his painting business. Call an apartment complex manager and just say, hey, like, I drove through your parking lot. I know your guys' sidewalks looked like they hadn't been pressure washed in a while. I don't know if it's on your calendar yet. I'm newer. I'm not gonna lie about that, but I know what I'm doing. I've done this a lot, and in order to show you guys that, like, I really would love to work together, would you be cool if I pressure washed your sidewalks for no charge the first time?
Mm. Yeah,
Right?
no,
Like,
that's yeah, that's good.
yeah, so like, prove, like, if I was, and let's say you decided, hey, I'm gonna go back and knock on more doors. That's actually the way I would do it. I would actually go into a neighborhood and I would offer whoever said yes first to me doing it for free. The only
Mm.
caveat would be that you let me put a sign in your front yard and you tell your friends that are your neighbors about it when it comes up, right? The
Mm.
idea is like, how can you get somebody to say yes, to show what you're capable of doing, to prove to them that you're good at what you do, that you do what you say you're going to do, and then you just ask them to send people to you.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking on it, and I really liked your term of your direct response marketing. I thought, and maybe you could point me in the right direction on this, but I see, no, I don't have $1,000 to throw at a direct mailer. I know probably 1,000 flyers would be around $100, which is definitely doable. I guess one thing I want to pick your brain about is, do you think that, like, because oftentimes I'll see, like, people talking about, like, using social media in this sense of, like, okay, going and recording you doing a house, and is that a form of direct response marketing, or is that more just like bringing more leads in?
Oh, one of the ways I like to describe direct response marketing is most advertising and marketing, most of their philosophy is I want to get my name out there. That's what you're talking
Mm,
about. I want to get my name into the community by showing off me pressure washing a building or whatever it is. Direct response marketing is the opposite. I want to get their name in here, right?
mm,
So when I send out a piece of direct response marketing, the reason it's called direct response is because unlike traditional marketing where I'm trying to broadcast my name out into the marketplace, what I'm
mm,
trying to do in direct response is I'm trying to get a direct response. I'm going to try and get them to
mhm,
respond directly to me because in the marketing piece itself, I'm making an offer.
mm,
I'm making an offer that they have an easy chance to say yes or no to, right? So, like
mm,
in our real estate business, the one that made us the most money and the one that we've done for the longest time is we offer an apartment guide. It's
mm,
difficult to get apartment market information like sales comps, what are cap rates doing, how many transactions last quarter or last year. It's not like Zillow. There's no Zillow for apartments. You can't just readily go find that information. So I'm going, well,
mhm,
hey, if you own apartments and you're in our target market, you can really benefit. There's value for you if I can tell you, here's what your property might be worth. Here's what other properties like yours are selling for. Here's how many sold. Here's what they sold to. Here's things that are going on in the marketplace legislatively that you might want to know about,
mm,
right? Like, so then I just send out a postcard and I just say, hey, we have this free Thurston County or whatever county we're going into apartment guide. And if you'd like it, here's how you can get it. You can directly
mm,
respond to us at this phone number, this email address, or this web address. And so if I send 1,000 of those, I can actually
mm,
track how many of those generated names in my database. Okay.
mm,
For you, and so for us in that business, our sales cycle is very long. So we might have to send that 4 or 5 or 6 times before somebody's ready. But here's the thing, because we're like, if we stay consistent at it, when they say they're ready, I don't usually have to compete with anybody else, right? I
mhm.
usually just get the business in whatever it is that we're trying to sell or to help them
Right.
with. For you, it's a little bit different because you're moving, and so you're not necessarily in a position where you're going to court these people for 4 or 6 months, but you don't have to because it's summer, or at least in Montana, you're going into summer, and people know that they need a pressure wash or they know that they need a window clean or whatever. And so for
Mhm,
a lot of these people, just like the pest control guy in my house here in Florida, it's just like, are you going to be the guy who's got something in front of them when it's time for them to say yes, right? Dean Jackson, he's another great direct response marketer, and one of my favorite things that he talks about all the time is any given marketplace, if you look at it, if you had 1,000 potential customers in that niche, let's say, about 3% of those people statistically will be in the market to buy the thing you're selling in the next 30 days or the next 60 days. Okay. 3%.
mm.
If you expand that window out to 18 months, it expands in most cases to about 50%.
Wow.
Most people are chasing the 3%. Everybody that's
Mm,
handing out flyers, knocking on doors, all those different they're all chasing the 3%. And there's not a lot that you're going to do to expand the 3% to 10%, right? People are going to buy it,
mhm,
I mean, when they're gonna buy it. Yeah, you can nudge it a little, but my philosophy is if I actually try and court the other 47% of people through like our apartment guide as an example, I'm still going to get some of the 3%, probably just as many as I would have otherwise, and maybe even more because I'm going to build trust. And so for you, you have to think through if you have 1,000 houses in your marketplace, let's say 3 to 5% of those are going to want a pressure wash job in the next 30 days, next 60
Mm,
days. And so how do you get to those people? Well, a big part of it is you just have to be there. They have to know about you, right? And that's why the
right.
social going back to social media, that's why like putting something on social media right now if you don't have an audience of your target customer is a complete waste of your time.
Right.
What's not a
Right.
waste of your time is get something in front of them, right? Get something in front of the people who are in your target market as quickly as you possibly can and do it in a way that's not annoying.
Mm. Yeah. So that's really really interesting advice, and I think that's really good. I appreciate it because it's for my 2 month arc. I would like to continue doing this when we move down to Florida. I think there's a lot of upside, especially in Florida. I know doing a little bit of market research down there that it's definitely in high demand. Um, so what sort of advice would you give me for like a long-term solution that I could be developing while I'm here as well? If I were like, okay, I want to establish this into something that actually means something. Because it's like part of it is like I really want to work on my message crafting. I think that's really what this door to door has helped me a lot too. Is like, okay, what am I saying to these people that's actually getting them interested? I'm very comfortable and familiar talking with businesses and business owners per se because it's like I can see from the other side. I work for a general contractor right now, right? So I'm a lot more comfortable talking with project managers and like a business transaction rather than like, hey, your driveway is like a little dirty, like like there's different ways
Sure.
of messaging in that, and I'm more experienced in the commercial way, I guess. If I were to do long term, wanting to stay in residential and do this in Florida as well, what would you say for that?
Well, I think that I think you can do both if you want to. I don't necessarily think you should, but it's like you got to think about who's the best customer, right?
Mm,
And people don't like this, but it's true. Oftentimes the best customers are the wealthy customers because
mm,
you're going to charge somebody $1,500 a pressure wash, and somebody who's willing to pay $1,500 to have something pressure washed and actually be excited about it because they're the guy who doesn't want to go get the pressure washer out of the garage, or in my case, I don't even want to have to own one anymore. It's
yeah.
like those are the kinds of guys who are actually going to be excited that you're there to solve that particular problem for them, right? And so on one hand, you have like what I would call more higher end residential, right? Because think about what's the purpose of business? So much of the purpose of business is to help people solve their problems and reach their goals. Okay?
Mm,
How many people who maybe let's say make $70,000 a year, they're barely making it, are going to be excited about
right.
you helping them make sure their driveway doesn't have any grime on it versus if you can reach somebody who's making 300,000, 400,000, or more, and they have a goal of like they want their home to look pristine, they want it to be relaxing when they come home, they want it to be in order, they want it to be orderly and beautiful. How many of
Mm,
them are going to be excited if you put them on a schedule and you're there when you say you're going to be there, and when you pressure wash you don't spray crap all over their house and you leave it cleaner than when you got there, right? How many of them are going to be like, Jake is one of my favorite guys,
right.
right? A lot.
No,
And
that's
so
good.
so I think that one is pick the best target market. Now, could you go commercial? Yeah, you could go commercial. Commercial would be guys like apartment managers, retail shopping center managers, medical facility managers, and you could get into all kinds of other things, right? You can go pressure washing, you can go stormwater retention pond maintenance, you could go window washing, you could have like this full services suite. For them, it's a different message in a way, but it's also very similar in the sense that like for me, because those are the people that we're hiring every day, it's like, listen, I want somebody who's going to remind me when it's time to do it so I don't have to remember. I want somebody who's going to actually help me coordinate with the tenants and the people who I know are going to make a big fuss and a big stink about it so that they're making my life easier. I know I'm going to want
Mm.
people who are going to not make a mess and not spray crud all over. Like, it's like, yeah, those are all things, but those are not hard things to come up with in terms of your messaging if what you're really thinking about is whoever I'm talking to, what is their goal? What is their goal
Mm.
with their facility? And what are the
Mm.
problems that are keeping them from the goal or the frictions that they're sick and tired of having to deal with? And then those are the things that you speak to. And then as far as it's like if you're talking about long term, how do you do that? Um, well, the great thing about that kind of a business is I think it's as simple as like you build relationships, right? Like
Right.
you don't have to have some crazy internet. That's the problem with all the internet speak these days. Is everyone wants to turn every offline business into an online business. It's like, well, honestly, a lot of the times the thing that's the least scalable that makes the most difference is just being a human and having good relationships with the people you're serving, right? So we
Mm.
can get into that. I'm sure you'll have more questions, but those are some of the thoughts that I have off the top of my head.
No, that's really good. And to me, when I think of your comment of, uh, who has the most money, I think that in like serving those people, or maybe not even necessarily money, but like but let's say that let's call it disposable income. It's like when I go and I call property managers and apartment complexes and stuff like that, I tend to get a response of not it doesn't feel as humane or humanly as it would be in a residential stance. I almost get the response of like, oh yeah, send in your bid and we'll take a look at it. It's when you say that you use that messaging to create the relationships, I think that's really good. I really liked your note about when you were just talking about reminding that person like of when the time comes where you need to stormwater maintenance and stuff like that. That's a really interesting way of serving a business, rather than like if you were to be in a residential stance, it would more be like, okay, let me guard off her plants, so I don't spray chemicals on her flowers or whatever, right? So I think that's really good. I guess a question that I would have would probably be, when I think about going to these businesses and actually providing a service for them, I guess, where is there maybe a competitive advantage? Because for me, going to residential space, I can be like, okay, well, my competitive advantage would be my composure and communicating with the client and stuff like that. Where is there a competitive advantage for the commercial space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges in this particular kind of business is, excuse me, there's not necessarily like some, I mean, you're not going to have some crazy technology in most cases
Right.
that make you head and shoulders above everyone else and worth paying 50% more, right? Like the competitive advantage is, do you do what you say you're going to do?
Mm.
Do you, when you screw up, do you take ownership of it, make it right? Do you actually speak to people respectfully? Like, do you make the property manager or the property owner's life more easy or easier or more difficult, right? Like, your
Mm.
competitive advantage is your ability to be good at what you do and to do it in a way that makes them enjoy the experience as opposed to just be another vendor who they have to hire, right? It's like your competitive advantage in many instances is the experience, right? And so if you're going to call people up and you're going to court commercial clients, it's like, how do you give them a, as again, Dean Jackson would say, how do you give them a dream come true experience? And see, here's the problem. Like, so often people in business are so focused on what they want out of something that they never actually sit down and spend the time to figure out what does the client want? What is a dream come true experience for this client, and how can I provide that? So, as an example, I don't know what you're saying. I would love to hear what you're saying when you call these people, but um, the lazy way to do it is the way most people do it. They just start calling people. The better way to do it, if I were doing it, is I would drive out to the building and I would take some photos
Mm.
and I would call the person or I would call them and I would say, "Hey, I'm and I'll get into this because I don't want to spill the beans, but I would have like this ammunition where when I'm talking to them, I could say, "Hey, I went out to the site, I took some pictures, I found a few problem areas, I found some areas that we could clean up without, a ton of expense." And even if you can't, because here's the thing, in commercial, these people are usually operating on annual budgets. They're not necessarily just going to pull the trigger because you call them today.
Right.
They might budget for this at, a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. But if you could come to them and say, "Hey, there's some really problem areas," I could probably go hammer those out for you pretty quick. It would be pretty inexpensive, and it would at least keep the curb appeal looking nice until you're ready to do the whole thing. And it would be a great test for you to see if you like the kind of work that I do. Here's some
Mm,
photos of what I'm talking about. I could be out there as early as whatever, tomorrow,
right.
Friday, early next week. That kind of a thing. Whereas most people, again, not thinking about the client, just thinking, how can I get somebody to pay me as fast as possible? And so they just do it the lazy way. So,
Right.
that's an idea, but I would love to hear when you call these people, what are you actually saying to them?
No, no, I think that's totally fair. That's what I was going to mention next. Before I started all this, I watched this video from Myron Golden, and he was talking about this terminology, commission breath, and it just
Hmm.
stuck with me so hard. Of like the way he describes commission breath is like when you're talking to somebody, they know that you're trying to do it to get a dollar, right? And so I've been really trying to refrain from that when I specifically because contacting the commercial properties, I guess my messaging for both I'll mention, but for commercial, right now I've called real estate agents and I've called apartment complexes, all of which I have been to and I have seen. The real estate agents, I'm literally sitting outside of their sign in front of the houses or how buildings, quadplexes that I'm sitting in front of, and I say, "Hey, I'm looking at your property right now. I see that there's some staining. I know that you're getting ready to sell right now. I'm sure you want to up your curb appeal a little bit. Let me know if I can do it. Here's my price. Here's when I'm available. Give me a call back or, let me know what you think whenever." And I give them a fallback phone number and email or whatever. Um, I've talked to live people about that. I've talked to contract, like I've been redirected to contractors, and most of them have positive feedback, but once again, no response yet. When I'm talking to apartment complex, it's kind of a similar situation. I've been to them, I've seen, I know the square footage, so I can give a rough, accurate as estimate. It's going to be around a 15, 2 grand for this section of concrete or whatever it might be, right? Um, for residential, it's kind of the same thing where I'm walking up to their door and really I'm just saying, "Hey, I'm driving past. I was in the neighborhood. I saw that your driveway was, has some buildup on it. I'd love to take it off for you. It's going to be an hour and $100." And most of the time it ends up, like I said, "Oh, I have a pressure washer of my own. Thanks though." Or sometimes I don't even get to that part. It's one sentence long and I'm usually stopped about a quarter of the way through. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, so a couple things, and this is where like the strategy comes in. And again, why it's always better to play the long game than the short game. Part of your challenge is you're doing a sprint, right? Like you're trying to
Mm,
make a few extra dollars as you transition to a new place. And that's always more difficult than like knowing that you're trying to build a relationship for the next 3
right.
years. And the reason being is because the real estate agent's a great idea, right? I would definitely reach out to real estate agents, but you're calling them too late in most cases. Like the house is already listed. The
Right.
better idea is to get a real estate agent, get several real estate agents you can build relationships with, and say, "Hey, the best time to bring me in is when they're trying to get the house ready to list. You want the
Right.
pressure washing done before you get the photos, right? Like you're trying to get them ahead of when the
Mhm.
sign's in the front yard. So you're
Right.
just coming in a little too late. Your barrier to entry is going to be like 10 times
Mm.
higher once there's a sign in the yard and they've already done all the work and they're just tired of talking about it, thinking about it, doing
Mhm.
anything than if you could get them before the sign went in the yard. So I would be
Mm.
calling real estate agents and saying, "Hey, if you got any listings coming up, I know a lot of these people end up scrambling to get things ready. Here's how I can help." Uh, and then I'd have some pictures, right? Like, and it doesn't even
Right.
necessarily have to be pictures for you right now. It could just be like, "Hey, but pictures of a house that didn't get washed before they listed versus pictures that did."
Right.
So that's one thing. But I think the other thing is um when you're going to go and pitch something, and this is, listen, I don't have any data behind this. This is just my life's experience. I think when you knock on a door and say, "Hey, I see that you have some grime building up," what ends up happening, especially in the world that we live in, is like people get defensive,
Mm.
right? It's almost like if your wife put on a dress and you're like, "Yeah, I don't know, you're kind of look a little chunky right now." It's like it's not gonna go over very good, right? Because nobody
Right.
wants to hear that their house looks like crap or that they've got grime building on their driveway or whatever. And it is true,
Mm.
and there's a time where you can probably say it, but I never would open with that, right? Because
Mm.
once I open with something like that, somebody gets defensive immediately as a result, right? So a better way to do it, and I'm just thinking off the cuff here. Somebody opens the door, hey, I'm going to say their name, even though you wouldn't know their name. Hey, Mr. Jones, my name's Jake, and I'm driving through the neighborhood. I got a lot of people right now who I know they schedule their annual pressure washing for right when the weather starts to turn. And then that's where you could
Mm.
say, because a lot of times the snow, it's built up the grime over the winter. It's a great
Mm.
time to wash it out before everything gets dry. You know what I'm saying? And so you're just like, because I always say this, the first question that we always learn to ask as a kid is why. And it's
Mm.
the question we never stop asking, and it's the question salespeople never address. Like when you knock on somebody's door, the first question they ask is, why in the hell is this guy knocking on my door?
Right.
Right? And so it's like something as simple as, hey, I'm just doing my rounds. The snow's all melted. It looks like it's not coming back. This is usually when people in your neighborhood or in your area are looking to get on the schedule for pressure washing through the summer because it fills up fast. Like it makes logical sense, right? And I'm not saying that's necessarily the best opener, but I do think it's better than, hey, I saw you have this crap growing on your driveway, and I'm here. I can
Right.
fix it for you.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I feel like, the sales world is very there's so many diverse ways of thought, and people are always telling you this is the best way. And I'm curious, because one of the things I hear oftentimes is starting off with focusing on their problem. So that's kind of why I was saying it the way I was saying it, was like, okay, I'm targeting their problem is that they're experiencing every day. They probably walk out of their house and their concrete's black, right? And they're wanting to. So me starting off in that sense, that's what I was trying to do. But I see your way of doing it is doing the same way, but not directly saying like your concrete's black and makes your house look like 10 years older, which is also part of it. But yeah, no, I think that's totally good.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for your target market, like the best client, their driveway's not going to be black. The fact that their
Mm.
driveway's black is probably telling you they're not the best client. The best
Right.
client's driveway probably just has some grime on it, but looks like maybe it's a year old because that gives you the inclination, like, oh, these guys probably
Mm.
care enough to do something. And then the problem isn't that their driveway's black. The problem is like, dude, I don't want to spend my time dealing with this. I don't want to spend
Right.
my time trying to here's the other thing, Dean Jackson. I love Dean Jackson. So he talks about a five-star prospect. And he says, you want to go and you want to find yourself five-star prospects. And here's his list of the five stars. Number one, somebody who's willing to engage in a dialogue, right? If the first thing they
Mm.
do when you contact them is start yelling at you, honestly, it's probably not somebody you're going to want to work with for the rest of your life, right? You want
Right.
somebody who's willing to engage, willing to talk to you. The next one, somebody who's friendly and cooperative, right? Like somebody who, when they talk to you, isn't degrading, demeaning. They're actually willing to have like a normal human conversation with them. Excuse me. And in reverse, like you got to be the same thing back, right? You got to approach them in a way that's not annoying. That's why I say I wouldn't lead with, "Hey, your driveway's black," because
Mm.
their home is their home. Just like your wife's
Mhm.
dress is a dress, like she wants to look good in it. You want your home to look good. If somebody, the first thing they say to you is your home doesn't look good, it's like saying that your wife doesn't look fit in her dress. It just so it's a two-way
Mm.
street there. Number three is someone with a plan and knows what they want. It's very
Mm.
hard to sell successfully to somebody who has no idea what they actually want. That's why I say the guy with the black driveway, he's probably not your ideal client. Whereas somebody who looks like they've taken care of their house is probably an indicator, at least, that like, hey, these people care enough, they have a plan, they know enough about what they want that they're willing to do something. The next one is somebody who's interested in taking action in the next 6 to 12 months. In your case, it would obviously be sooner than that, but it's
Right.
like you want somebody who's actually thinking about doing something. You don't want tire
Mm.
kickers. Tire kickers are a waste of your time. That's why
Right.
going back to the beginning, I said like my original goal. at the highest level is get to know as fast as possible. And number 5 is somebody who'd actually like our help. Okay. So if you think about it, if you could find somebody who is willing to engage with you, someone who's friendly and cooperative, somebody with a plan and knows what they want, somebody who wants to take action in the near future and wants your help, it'd be a pretty easy sale, right?
No, I mean 100% will be, and it's so funny because I experienced this like live hand. Well, first off was my timing, right? So I was thinking about it. I was talking with my wife, and I was just saying, the first time I went was like 10 o'clock on Friday, and I sat there and I was like, I didn't have very much luck. Most people weren't home, and the people that were home were like not it. And I was like, that makes so much sense. Because probably the people who would want to purchase pressure washing are not going to be home on a Friday at 10 o'clock. Like people who have a, pride in their driveway, or, well, maybe they work from home or something like that. Not to say everybody who's at home, but like most of the time they'd answer with PJs on and, maybe had a beer in their hand or something. And so I completely understand that. And yeah, no, I really appreciate the thoughts there. So,
Yeah, and I think for you and for everybody, if anybody's watching or listening to this who's running a business, which most people probably are or do, is to me sales. It really so much of it comes down to how can you get access to the kind of person that you want to help, that wants your help, the most effectively and efficiently, right? I personally, again, I'm in a business where we don't have to do this. I picked a business where we don't have to do this because I don't want to do this. I don't want to knock on doors. I don't want to cold
mm,
call people. And I've made lots of money and I've made lots of money for other people, never having to do that. Now,
mm.
there are other people who might watch this or listen and say, well, that's bad advice because you could have made even more if you had. And I go, that's great. But that wouldn't be fun to me. That wouldn't be
Right.
enjoyable to me. That's not the life that I want to live. And so my point is like the reason that I think we've been able to do that is because we actually, it's like you and I had a conversation a while back about the guy sitting there and it's like they're going to have a tree cutting down contest. And the one guy's like pounding and pounding and pounding. And then I think the parable goes, and then the other guy's just sitting there sharpening his knife or whatever. And to me, that's like what I'm talking about is the guy who's going to go knock on every door, cold call every single person. He's the guy who's just like whacking the tree with his axe until he literally drops dead of fatigue or cuts the tree down. The other way is you actually spend a lot of time thinking through like the human psychology and who these people are and where they congregate and how can you access them and how much is it going to cost versus how much can you charge and what's the math behind it, because I promise you that like doing it that way is actually more scalable. Like once you have a system and you know that the system works because you've actually really sharpened the axe, you really thought through these kinds of things, then you just execute. And obviously as you execute, you have to iterate because it's like, oh, this word doesn't work very well. Or I sent to this neighborhood and this neighborhood's not good. I got to send to this neighborhood. But it's like once you have that system in place, it's literally just like, oh, where else do I want to plug this in? And then how do I find people who can deliver the service in this new place? And so hopefully something that we shared here was helpful for you as you figure out what you're going to do next.
No, no, I mean, that is beyond. I appreciate it so much. It's been a serious humbling experience, this whole, going out there and knocking on doors and calling people, because it's one thing you've always told me actually is talk is cheap, and that's 100% what I'm learning every single day is like this is a lot harder than it looks, a lot harder than it seems, and I appreciate the advice. So, thank you.
Yeah. Well, keep it up. You'll, I think that's the thing for me. One of the reasons that we talk so much about business is, people just have the wrong impression of business. They have the wrong impression of what it takes to really be successful in business. And one of the reasons I want to have this conversation for whoever watches it and actually sticks around for this long is because these are the kinds of things that we have to think through to be successful in what we do and to do it for a long time. And not much that we talked about here was like how to fleece. Well, nothing we talked about was how to fleece someone or how to manipulate someone. It was all how do we serve people? How do we get into the minds of people so we can actually serve them better? And so I think that, to the degree that you continue to operate in that vein, you will be successful. And failure is part of learning how to be successful. But the reality is we need more people out there doing this, serving each other and finding success than not. So with that, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching another video, another Move Right video. And if you liked it, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you think somebody could benefit, we'd love it if you'd share it with them. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You can also check out our website, moveright.me. Moveright.me. We're starting something new here in the future. We're going to host basically online live virtual meetups with folks who want to tackle these kinds of concepts, these kinds of things, as well as things that relate to our personal lives every Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. If that's something you're interested in, check out the website. You can register, and we'll see you hopefully at a meetup in the future. So, again, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.